AskReddit by OK Push 7433. What's a conspiracy theory that you find strangely compelling, even though you don't believe it? PETA is secretly funded by the meat industry. That's interesting. I need to research this. Why would they do that? The theory that JFK was killed by one of his Secret Service agents accidentally discharging his gun. Everything else played out as is commonly understood. Lee Harvey Oswald shot at the motorcade from the book depository, but he didn't hit the president and it was actually an accidental death in the ensuing panic. It's just plausible enough to be true, and to require a far-reaching cover-up to hide an embarrassing truth. I personally prefer the theory that no one shot JFK, and his head just did that. One conspiracy theory that I find oddly fascinating, even though I don't buy into it, is the idea that the moon landing was fake. It's kind of mind-boggling to think about how much effort and secrecy it would take to pull off such a hoax, especially with the technology available at the time. But when you dig into the evidence, like the moon rock samples and all the photos and videos, it's pretty convincing that we actually did make it to the moon. Still, it's wild to see how some folks keep the idea alive despite all the proof against it. In addition to how much effort it would take to successfully fake it, how they also convinced the Russians that it was legitimate. If they had any doubt it was real, they absolutely would have publicly accused them of it. That an alien species created us. Think about what we can do now, with cloning and our tech level. Now add 1,000 years of more technological advancement. Hollow Earth. For people who equally hate gravity and geology. I had a conversation with an undergrad geology student who just watched the core who speculated that voids might exist in the mantle ugh. Bigfoot Sasquatch. The idea there's some humanoid creatures wandering around the forests in the US avoiding human contact is chef's kiss. My Ivy League educated ex-girlfriend was oddly obsessed with this. I never could get a good handle on if she thought it was ironic, weird, or kind of wanted it to be true. Wasted way too much time watching Finding Bigfoot with that girl instead of moving on. Moon landing being fake is just interesting. The amount of planning and marketing to pull that off would be truly incredible. The Soviet Union would have known it was fake and they would have milked it for all it's worth. All of the legitimate occult cryptozoological extraterrestrial findings are infiltrated by USA-backed spooks to keep us from having a complete understanding of the universe. It's probably in our best interest because, well, look at the internet. However, I do believe that there is suppressed knowledge. I think the world is way crazier, given the multitude of accounts from reasonably rational persons, than we give it credit for. Now maybe this information is being suppressed as an act of control or not IDK, and honestly it's not worth a brain power. However, you can just tell me that a large portion of people around the world have visions and sight of this in the afterlife and also say they are crazy when they have their shit together more than the average tweaker who just thinks the CIA talks to them through the pigeons. The lost cosmonauts theory. Basically the idea that a bunch of secret Soviet space missions failed and they covered them up and left the astronauts up there to die. It's been pretty thoroughly debunked, but it's a fun premise. Constellation TV show on Apple recently hinted at this. LBJ had JFK killed with the help of the mafia. The shooter didn't act alone. I don't know for sure, it's not true. But the evidence isn't there for me to believe in it or talk about outside of questions like this. I hate that I read LBJ as LeBron James at first. Basically every conspiracy theory ever. I love fantasy and fiction. I've always enjoyed ghost stories and mythology. Conspiracy theories tickle my brain something fierce. Me too, I have always considered them some type of myth or fiction. But I love hearing about so many of them. When the Hadron Particle Collider went online, we were all transported into a different timeline. There are some days where this theory is the only thing that makes sense. Big Pharma hiding cures to make more money off treating diseases. I personally don't believe such cures actually exist, but lobbying or some other form of corporate sabotage does seem very in character for a giant capitalist cartel. Ancient aliens. Deleted. The hollow moon theories are super fun. It was brought to Earth by aliens, and is why the lizard people race died off. The addition of the moon made the thick mist that covered Earth's surface to condense quickly, causing massive floods. There are several tribes that have stories about from before the moon arrived. I read a sci-fi novel in high school where we discover that the moon is actually a Death Star-sized spaceship from a dead alien race, and all of humanity is descended from the crew of that ship. Since it's relevant today, OJ didn't commit the murders but was covering for his son who did the actual killing. They used to say that in the Lindy Chamberlain case, Dingo got my baby. One of the kids was accidentally involved and they covered it up. Total crap, but it's one of the oldest I recall from the 80s. People who think birds aren't real. I still have no idea if this is something people actually believe or if it's some kind of bizarre satire. And I first heard about this probably 10 years ago. The justification for flat earthers is oddly plausible. Like they think that the global elite are keeping the area outside the borders for themselves, and that it's a veritable paradise. Of course the earth is not flat, and there is no outside the borders that isn't outer space, but just saying. If the earth was flat, and the part we knew ringed by nigh impenetrable mountains, the global elite would keep it for themselves. I may regret asking this, but isn't this just sort of a variation on simulation theory? Like the idea of a higher force controlling reality and it looks different than it really is? Many are strangely compelling to humans, that's what makes them so insidious. It requires extra effort for humans to think critically because, and it's been researched, we default to believing well-constructed stories, find it easy to perceive ourselves as powerless in the face of things outside our knowledge, have a huge affinity to an in-group, against the often nameless other, and on it goes. Education is the only answer. POWs were left behind in Vietnam after the war. Chemtrails are a form of mind control. BS of the highest level. The same about water fluoridation. How would this even be possible? Tartaria fascinates me. Especially the part about the beautiful old buildings that harnessed free energy and were dismantled or destroyed so that companies could profit by selling us electricity. The most compelling thing for me is looking at the Chicago World's Fair, all the beauty and architecture, and the official story is that these were temporary buildings that were then razed after a few months when the fair ended. You can see from photos they were special and had been there a long time. And the story of poor Nikola Tesla, who was trying to bring back free energy and was central to the Chicago World's Fair. I've been to Notre Dame in Paris, the Parthenon, etc. The official story is they were supposedly built by peasants with horse-drawn carts and chisels and hammers? No way. There was an ancient civilization that used those buildings for energy or healing of some sort. I'm all in on Tartaria conspiracy theory. There's a sub here for Tartaria. The internet is mostly fake and AI generated, including users. So bots? I find all conspiracy theories fascinating and impressive in the way given enough information some humans will accept as fact regardless of facts. I choose the belief that aliens do not exist. I am not sure I can justify the hubris of that assumption. But I seriously doubt they visit us.